HarperAudio Australia presents All Women Want, written by Alyx Gorman and read by Claudia Karvan. For those who dare to ask and care to listen. Introduction. Mind the gap. Shortly before I walked into my first orgy, I got into an argument about what an ideal sex life looks like. I was speaking with a man I'll call Richard. Although Richard is around 20 years older than me, and likely earns more in a month than I do in a year, I stood my ground. I did so because I knew with absolute certainty that he was wrong and I was right. By the time of our disagreement, I had already interviewed more than 100 people about sex. About half were women who opened their intimate lives to me, and the other half were experts who dedicate their working hours at least partially to human sexuality. I'd taken a Sexuality 101 course for healthcare workers, sat in on romance book clubs, gone to a male strip review show, attended a porn festival, visited the headquarters of the world's largest vibrator company, and spent a week studying in the Kinsey Institute's archive room. I'd been to sex museums, read a lot of sex books, and seen some pictures of vulva surgery I'll never be able to unsee. In other words, I had done my homework. Richard, meanwhile, was going on vibes. The Kinsey Institute in Bloomington, Indiana, is one of the first and most prestigious centers for the scientific study of human sexuality. It is named for its founder, biologist Alfred Kinsey, who interviewed thousands of people about their sex lives during the late 1940s through to his death in the mid-1950s. He is perhaps most famous for developing the Kinsey scale, a 0 to 6 measurement for sexual orientation, with 0 being totally straight and 6 being totally gay. Kinsey introduced the scale in 1948, so perhaps, unsurprisingly, it did nothing to capture the rainbow of gender identity or expression. Though the scale wasn't big on gender fluidity, it did bring nuance to discussions of sexuality by suggesting orientation is a shifting spectrum, not a rigid binary. Richard told me he knows the secret to a successful sex life. First, he said, your wife must be your best friend, but also someone you want to have sex with. Because that is the main difference between wives and friends. Friends are people you do not want to have sex with. This is untrue. Plenty of people have great sex with their friends and would not make those friends their wives. Next, he said, in the early days of the relationship, you should be having sex at least 5 times a week. When life gets more busy and kids are in the picture, that number might drop down to 3 times a week, but it really shouldn't be fewer than that. If you're falling down to once a week, you already have serious problems. There is a lot to unpack in this metric-heavy prescription for conjugal contentment. But I'll start with the part Richard left unsaid. If you're having sex with someone 5 times a week, you're probably not spending much time on it. Some of the most breathtaking sexual encounters women have described to me have lasted several hours. It is logistically impossible to have the kind of sex they have told me about 5 times a week. There just aren't enough hours to do it in. Not that everyone loves a marathon sex session, but when you're talking about volume instead of duration, you're probably already walking down the wrong street. Moreover, many folks, including married couples, are perfectly content with not having sex. Their only problem is worrying about whether it is a problem. Richard refused to believe me on this one, even when another woman chimed in. Asexuals exist. Asexuality does indeed exist, and like all sexuality, it exists on a spectrum. Some people might experience little to no sexual or romantic attraction to anyone. Some people are interested in romance, but not sex. Others in sex, but not romance. There are all
Sample complete. Ready to continue?